Ellie. Hello everyone, I'm Madeleine. I'm Director of Business Development and Innovation at Carers UK, and I've worked for quite a few years on how technology and digital can support carers, and my role in the organisation is helping to develop and roll out digital products and services that can support carers in their caring role and can support working carers. So I run our Employers for Carers forum, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here today talking about something I feel really very passionate about. So thanks for having me, Ellie.
Fantastic. I'll now screen share your presentation, Madeleine, and let me know once you would like to change slides. Can you all see that?
I can, Ellie, so thanks very much.
Fantastic. Okay.
Great. If you just move us straight on to the first slide, that would be great.
Yes.
Thanks. So I know that you had a session a couple of weeks ago with my colleague Erin, and Erin talked about some of the everyday technologies that we use, and that can actually be used for caring. And you'll see here some examples on screen: remote central heating monitoring, the pretty ubiquitous Alexa, smart plugs. There's a banking app here on the left, Trivago. We book our travel and leisure online. We buy our food online, and actually through Amazon, we buy pretty much anything online. And of course, all of us are now using these communication apps, WhatsApp, FaceTime, Zoom, to communicate with each other, but also to communicate with our loved ones in the pandemic. And we're seeing the use of these more and more. Next slide, please, Ellie. But there are also technologies that are specific to support caring. And really this session is to talk about those and to help understand how much you know about them, because we've got some examples here, and I can bet that fewer people are aware of these than they are of the technologies we saw on the earlier slide. Next slide, Ellie. So, the question is, how much do you know about these caring technologies, and indeed where to find them and how to fund them? We've done a couple of surveys in the past that have found that even the most tech-savvy carers, people using technology every day for things like banking, shopping, etc., they simply don't think about technology when it comes to their caring role. So the purpose of today is to think about, what are those technologies? How can they support you? Thanks. Next slide, Ellie. So this is our guide, What Can Tech Do For You? You can find this on our website, and the web address is there at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is give you a very quick guided tour, if you like, of this guide and the various categories of technology and support it looks at to understand what is available, and then a little bit at the end about where you can find it and indeed how to fund it. Next slide, Ellie. And we're going to begin by looking at environmental monitoring and independent living. Next slide, Ellie. Okay, so here we see some examples of technologies that you can use in the home to promote independent living. You might ask, well, central heating, why have we got that back up again? I know I use that to monitor my own central heating, but in fact, it's also extremely useful to monitor the heating of the person you're caring for if you're living at a distance. So not only can you go into the app to see what the temperature in your own home is like, whether or not your heating should be on, you can look at your mum's home through her app. And see if her central heating needs turning on. And in fact, you can do that remotely. And that's incredibly useful, especially with older people who are very often reluctant to put their heating on, aren't they, as a saver. And the same thing with a smart plug. We saw a smart plug in its everyday use. And a smart plug is really useful, isn't it? Where we can actually program it to come, a plug to come on, light to come on when we're not in the home. But actually, we can also program a smart plug to bring a light on for someone we're caring for, again at a distance, when they may not have great mobility and you may not want them up and out of a chair turning on the lights. And if you look below that, you can see here the example of Alexa being programmed to close the blinds in the living room at 8. So you put your mum's light on, you close the blinds, and there you are set up for the evening. And in the bottom right-hand corner, all kinds of examples of smart appliances. So the way these smart plug technologies and smart technologies can be applied to the home, to the kettle, to the microwave, things you can turn on and off remotely, things you can monitor remotely for alerts, more of that in a moment. Next slide, Ellie. So how do we use these to actually understand if something has actually happened? So these monitor, but they don't necessarily notify. So we're going to look now at some technologies that do notify you. Next slide. And here we have some. On the bottom left there, you'll see the one which is almost certainly the best known, probably known to all of you, even if you don't know the rest, and that's the pendant alarm, which is most widely used, I think, in a care setting. And that either someone wears around their neck or they wear it on their wrist, and they press a button if they're in trouble, and they're put through to a monitoring center, and they actually get through to a voice, and someone answers their call, and will determine if they're okay, or indeed, send out an ambulance. It's generally considered to be a bit stigmatizing. People don't always like wearing these. They say it identifies them as older or frail or vulnerable. So we see above it the much more beautifully, elegantly designed Buddy, which does much the same thing. So Buddy is also functions as an alarm, an SOS, but it's also a falls detector. So the person wearing Buddy, if they fall, that event is sent to the monitoring center and they are contacted. But of course, it can be sent to the monitoring center, but also sent to the carer. So you can know, if you're caring for someone at risk of a fall, you can know that they've fallen, and you can know that it's being responded to. And the same thing is true here of the device we see up on the top right, which is an SOS GPS tracker. And this is a way of keeping tabs, if you like, on someone, basically knowing where someone is. It can be really useful if you are caring for someone who has dementia, who might be prone to wandering, or maybe, a young learning disabled adult or teenager. You just want to make sure they're safe and sound. You can actually set a geographical area, and it will notify you if the person with the tracker, wearing the tracker, goes out of that area. We see below that a bed sensor. So this tells you if someone is in and out of bed. You can actually monitor the number of times someone gets out. It can either alert you if someone gets out of bed. So that can be used in a home. If you're living with someone, if they're actually up, helps you get a better night's sleep. You're not always having to have that awake ear. But it's also quite good at building a pattern of someone's behavior, because if they're in and out of bed 6 times in the night to go to the bathroom, then that might be an early indicator, for example, of a UTI. And this little device below on the right is a motion sensor. So as someone passes by, you'll know that they've traveled past it. So again, that can monitor the number of times someone goes to the bathroom in the night, for example. But you can also put it on a fridge and understand if someone's fridge is opened. So is the fridge being opened? Therefore, is someone making the cup of tea and taking milk out to put in the tea in the morning? And in the middle there, we see a fairly traditional smoke detector, but with an alarm, which is an additional layer of reassurance. Okay, next slide, Ellie. Sorry, Ellie, that's it, lovely. So our next category is vital signs monitoring. So if we move straight on to our pictures, Ellie, here we've got some examples of vital signs monitoring. Now, quite a few of us will be using some form of vital signs monitoring ourselves. I don't know about the audience. I have a blood pressure monitor that I use on a pretty regular basis, but it's a pretty old-fashioned one. And here we can see a nice, there on the top left, a nice blood pressure monitoring app, which not only monitors your blood pressure, but it is able to track it over a period of time and give you a picture of what your blood pressure is. Below that is a blood glucose monitor. We have blood oximeter in the middle, which measures oxygen levels. On the right of that, a watch cardiogram, which is actually measuring heart rate. Above that is a device used for sleep apnea, which actually measures your vital signs as you sleep, if you have sleep apnea, and therefore very often problems with sleep, then connected health problems. And at the bottom, you can see, the whole range of vital signs that one of these trackers can actually monitor, respiration rate, your blood pressure trends, your temperature, your heart rate. So these things can be, real touchstones for someone's health and well-being. And if we look at the next category, Ellie, they very often connect to remote healthcare. Next slide. So we can use these ourselves. We can use them to monitor someone else. So it may be that the person with the condition who you are supporting can manage a degree of self-care. If not, you might be managing this self-care for them. You may be managing these apps and devices for them, or indeed they could be connecting to a clinician. So a lot of these devices in telehealth will connect to a monitoring center, telehealth center, and be monitored either by a triage nurse, by a clinician, who can respond if the readings are not as they should be. So, we can see someone in the center here looking at the dashboard, their dashboard, and on the left then someone actually responding to the vital signs. On the top right, we see a remote speech therapy session, and increasingly speech therapy is being delivered remotely, which helps to offset some of the chronic shortages in speech therapists, and actually helps parents to engage too in speech therapy sessions and help deliver them. Bottom in the center, for you, Louise, particularly here, we see remote physiotherapy. So these can be used very, very successfully for physiotherapy programs. And to the right of that, we see a slightly more complex rehabilitation app. So that physio can then be part of a wider regime, which might include other rehabilitation elements. And at the bottom left, we've got someone using a mental health service. And we have seen a real proliferation of mental health apps and online mental health services, not only in the pandemic, but before. But it's been a bit of a lifesaver whilst people have been forced to be remote, and they can be highly effective. Next slide, Ellie. Okay, the next category is a nice straightforward one, medication management. So if we move on to the slide on the left here, at the top, we see the Pivotal medication dispenser. Very, very straightforward. This is familiar, I think, probably to some people. And you fill this up with the right amount of medication for the person you're supporting. You program it and it opens at the right time of day with the right dose of whatever that medication is. You can't necessarily tell it's been taken, but you certainly know it's opened, and it will alert you if it hasn't. We've connected a Pivotal medication dispenser now to our care coordination app jointly. So you can actually buy a Pivotal dispenser, which is connected to jointly. So it sends the notifications from the dispenser to the app as well. So it sends it to the caring circle. And that's proved to be a really useful feature. And on the right there is another example of a medication app. We can see a skin sensor at the bottom there, skin patch, where people are able to manage a medication regime. You can actually use these very sensitive skin patches to dispense medication. And these are getting more and more sophisticated over time, can deliver more and more medication over time. Top right, we see a much more simple asthma dispenser, and I think quite a few of us are familiar with these, which actually measure and dispense the right amount of medication, not only used in asthma now, but in much wider range of conditions. And in the middle there is rather a nifty medication bot, which will actually speak to you and tell you to take your med and then open and give them to you. I've seen this in action. It is actually it's very engaging, rather a bit like a pet. Thanks, Ellie. Next slide. And finally, the category of enhancement technology. So if you move us on, here we are. So this can be something as simple as hearing aids. At top left here, we've got an example of a digital hearing aid, and these are becoming more and more sophisticated. Sometimes you can barely see them, but they don't necessarily have to be put in and out all the time. That can be very useful if someone struggles with that. We've got the Fitbit. I don't know about all of you, but mine never leaves my wrist. And I use it for very basic things like measuring my fitness levels, but I do also use it to monitor my sleep, which is really useful. And on the bottom left there, we've got an associated sleep app. And these apps are really used quite widely. We know that getting enough sleep is a big issue for carers. So not only for the person that they are supporting, but also for carers themselves. These can be really, really useful. We've got a brain trainer app there in the middle. So again, if you are supporting somebody with dementia, these can be incredibly useful and quite fun to use. So if you engage somebody using a tablet, for example, and it's almost like a game you play to help train the brain. and to keep cognitively active. And there is then an exercise version of that up there on the top right with somebody using an exercise app. But then a slightly more sophisticated use of that type of technology here in the bottom right is Brain in Hand. And Brain in Hand has been developed to support people with autism, and it helps them to manage their levels of anxiety by identifying within the app, program the app to identify stress triggers that are associated with a particular event, for example, a journey. So if you are supporting someone with autism, they can use the app to identify what might be causing them anxiety about the journey, what might trigger stress, and it uses a traffic light system to manage that. I've seen this in action and it's highly effective, really, really helpful. Okay, next slide, Ellie. So that's a bit of a gallop, I'm afraid, through some of the categories of information that are included in our guide. So I would urge you to go on and take a look at it. You also have a really useful video, which just gets you thinking about the use of technology and how it can support your caring role, gets you thinking. But we've also got information on the website about where to find technology. So first, we've got information on online platforms that offer advice, information, useful product reviews and comparisons, which can be very helpful. These are below. I'm going to take a look at one of these in slightly more detail in a moment. And then at the bottom, online marketplaces. A lot of people buy their technology products and services directly. And here you've got 3 sites, including which did a really excellent review of technology products a few years ago, updates it every year and has some really, really great information on technologies. And final slide, oh, no, next slide. This is our own bespoke version of one of the websites that we showed you under the online information section on the previous slide. This is Ask Sarah, and this is a really brilliant assessment tool provided by the Disabled Living Foundation and connects to their website, which is excellent, has a whole range of aids, adaptations, and digital and technology products and services that can support care and caring. And you use Ask Sarah either to identify a particular activity of daily living that you would like to get help with. So if you're supporting somebody with mobility issues, for example, then you can ask questions that relate to mobility, or you can identify an area of the home. So if it's a particular area that you're worried about, the kitchen, for example, with all the risks that the kitchen can hold, then you click on that and it will take you through some of the risk areas and some of the products and services, aids and adaptations available to help in that area. So again, got the web address, our web address for Ask Sarah here. So do advise you just to click on that link and take a look at Ask Sarah and the whole range of products and services that it can signpost to. Okay, and then the final slide, just some thoughts about funding. Following a needs assessment, if you have a needs assessment, a local authority might offer technology solutions to support care. They are doing that increasingly, offering care packages that also include technology. But of course, depending on financial circumstances, you may well have to pay a charge for these technology solutions because services are sadly means tested. If, however, a local authority offers them as a preventive service, very often there isn't a charge. That will depend on the policy of the local authority, but some prevention services are provided free of charge because they save cost to the local authority further down the line. Telehealth solutions for health monitoring, they tend to be free because they're part of the health service, free at the point of delivery, and they'll be available through your GP, community health team, or a hospital specialist. So in areas where they operate telehealth, there will rarely be a charge for those services. And of course, as I said, you can buy telecare and telehealth products directly. If you do that, they may qualify for VAT relief. So it's useful to find that out. And with that, I'm going to stop my my very quick tour, and I'm going to hand over to Christina to talk to you about smart meters and how they can support.
Fantastic, Madeleine.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today and for allowing me to join the session. I'm really privileged to have the opportunity to speak to you all. So my name's Christina Panayiotou. I'm a partnership marketing manager at the company Smart Energy GB, and we've been working in partnership with Carers UK since June. And I'm very happy to also share my own caring journey. So I was a carer for my mum during her cancer diagnosis. And to be completely honest, it took me some time to identify myself as a carer. And I think this is, well, I'm sure this is something that many of you can relate to as well. So Ellie, would you mind getting the slides up, and then I'll talk through a little bit.
Absolutely. I'll also pin Louise as your presentations are connected. So bear with me.
No worries.
Let me know if you can all see that on your screen.
I can certainly see it on mine, so I'm hoping everybody else can too.
Fantastic.
Great, thank you, Ellie. So I'll just tell you a little bit more about my company. So Smart Energy GB, basically it's a not-for-profit government-backed campaign, and it helps everyone in Great Britain to understand the importance of smart meters and the benefits they can bring both to people and to the environment. So Madeleine provided lots of really great examples of assistive technologies to support caring, but I wanted to talk to you specifically about how smart meters could play a role in supporting health and social care. So I've got a few slides to run through with you to give you a bit more detail about what smart meters are, the potential benefits that they could bring, not only for you, but the person that you care for. And then I'll go into a bit of detail of how data from smart meters could be used to alert carers should additional support be required. We go on to the next slide, thank you. So yeah, I will pass over to Louise afterwards from the company Howz, and she'll talk you through specifically in regards to their app and how it works with smart meters. But starting of which, I'm sure many of you are aware of smart meters, but I thought it would just be useful to tell you kind of a bit of the basic details of what they are and what they do. So they're the next generation of gas and electricity meters, and they're being installed in homes across Great Britain at the moment. And they're replacing what are kind of the traditional analog meters that everybody has, situated either under your stairs or in boxes outside of your homes. And smart meters show how much gas and electricity is being used and what it's costing you. And what it does is it displays this on a small device, which is often, well, it's called an in-home display, but it's often abbreviated to IHD. And in terms of how the smart meter works, so the smart meter will record your energy usage. These meter readings are then automatically sent to your energy supplier using a secure system. And then you as the customer get the accurate bill reflective of this energy usage. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about this in-home display, the IHD, and what it shows you. So it comes with your smart meter, and as you can see, the photo on this slide, this is kind of what a typical IHD looks like. But energy suppliers offer different IHTs, which means that yours may look slightly different from this picture, or it may look slightly different from ones that you may have seen at friends' houses or neighbours or family houses. But all IHTs, irrespective of what they look like, should provide you with following information and functionality. So first of all, they should show you either your electricity and or your gas usage. And you can change between showing this in pounds and pence, or the very technical term of kilowatt hours, which is a very kind of energy related way of kind of costing up your energy. So I would certainly say pounds and pence is the more kind of obvious and simple way to look at your energy usage. And you can see this usage in per day, per week, or per month. And you can also see whether you're kind of using low, medium, or a high amount of energy. The second thing that the IHD does, it can compare your usage across weeks or months. So for instance, you can compare how much energy you used in October this year in comparison to how much you used last year. And then thirdly, it also gives you the ability to set budgets. So on some IHDs, you can set targets, so in pounds and pence, to help you budget for your daily, weekly, or monthly usage. And your IHD will kind of help you monitor how you're doing against your target. So if you need to make kind of changes around the home, that can make sure you ensure that you remain in budget. We can go to the next slide. Thanks, Ellie. So why kind of smart meters, and what's the kind of benefit for carers and the person that you care for? Well, I'm sure, like, many carers helping, you do an enormous amount for the people that you care for, but often managing energy might be one of the kind of huge amount of tasks that you perform. And because smart meters send the gas and electricity meter readings directly and securely to your energy supplier. This means you don't have to take the meter reading. It doesn't mean that you or the person you care for has to, you know, get to the back of a dusty cupboard or climb on, you know, precarious steps if your meter is awkwardly situated. So that is kind of a real benefit. Another thing is that they enable accurate billing. So it means that the person you care for will only pay for the energy they actually use. So it just kind of prevents that kind of need for you to constantly have to call your energy supplier and try and sort out unexpected bills. And as I mentioned earlier, the IHD shows you kind of in near real time how much energy is being used in pounds and pence. So it can make it easier potentially to keep an eye on your energy spending habits and potentially make small changes around the home to save money if you can. And if you've got what's known as a prepay meter, so that's the one that you have to top up. You have to top up money in order to get gas and electricity into your home. If you have a smart prepay meter, there's a few different ways you can now top up. So you can still top up physically within a shop, but you also have the flexibility of topping up online. You can top up via telephone or text message, or even using a smartphone app as well. So there's lots of kind of ways that hopefully kind of demonstrate how smart meters could potentially enable greater independence for the person that you care for. Moving on to the next slide. Thanks, Ellie. So the next slide here, we're talking specifically about how smart meters could have the potential to transform health and social care. So kind of touching on and moving on from what Madeleine was talking about and what Louise will go on to as well. So last year, us at Smart Energy GB, we commissioned a report alongside a social enterprise called 2020 Health. And what this report did is it highlighted the ways that smart energy usage could help care for vulnerable and older people and make it easier for them to live in their homes for longer, or to help better care for people with conditions such as dementia, and particularly those who may be living alone. So with the consent of the householder, energy use data from smart meters could be used as a non-intrusive way to help people who have got a long-term condition or are vulnerable in other ways. So for instance, irregularities, if I can say the word, in patterns of energy use behaviour could alert relatives, carers or healthcare workers that the individual may need additional support. So for instance, if there were signs that, you know, electrical usage was being used at really odd times of day, or if you know, for instance, that the person you care for, your mum, always puts the heating on at a certain amount of, every day at 7 p.m. And if that pattern suddenly changes, a text alert could be sent to you as a carer or to a trusted relative, suggesting that they check up on them. But I think it's important to say that robust data security, privacy and consent is obviously needed and needs to be factored in to ensure that people are comfortable with this process. And I keep saying could, but there are actually loads of products out there on the in the market offering this service, and we'll hear from Louise on the product that she works on in this space. But it is important to say that, the more people who install smart meters into every home, it could become, a telehealth solution sitting in all homes that require it for the future. Fingers crossed we get to that point. So that's it from me. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me. I'm very happy to answer any questions before I hand over to Louise.
Thank you, Chris.
Hello, everybody. So annoyingly, I am a physiotherapist. And so I really would like everyone to just stop a second, sit heads up. And I want you to just all take your arms up if you can, just all out to the side. That's it. Oh, feel the stretch. And then you can come back down. Excellent. A little postural awareness. I have got you all on my screen. I am watching. No, I'm joking. But it's just good to have a little move. Right. So I'm if you want to put my slides up, thank you. So I'm a physio. So I specialise in neurology in older people, but I'm also Chief Operating Officer at Howz. I'm actually co-founder of Howz. If I go to the next slide, and I just thought I'd share with you, this is me and my mum, and I just thought I'd share with you a little bit about where I've come from and what we're doing this for. So as a physio, I know that the earlier I can get in to help somebody, the better, and that nothing breaks my heart more than seeing somebody when they've had trouble for a long time. And I work with families a lot, and I think, oh, I wish I'd got in here earlier. And I think with the NHS now as it is, unfortunately, the case is that we're often seeing people later and later. I then worked as a commissioner I was actually buying services in Manchester, and I looked and realised that no one was buying physiotherapy or occupational therapy or speech therapy, because you couldn't see why they would need it. And that made me start to think about data, and is there a better way, and how do I preserve my own profession? That was really why I got into it. So I believe really that the thing we want to do is detect change early. And it gives you time to think what's caused the change and to do something about it. And it might be for the good or it might be for the bad. So what we did was the very first thing we did was use an electricity meter. So we put a clamp on an electricity meter and to see if that would learn routine and whether we could find out information. And this was back in 2016. And we found it was really helpful. But unfortunately, not the safest thing apparently to be using, although clamps were fitted prolifically around for energy saving. It only takes one person to clamp it to something they shouldn't, and it's not a good outcome. So we switched across to smart plugs at that point, but we've used sensors in the home, just as Madeleine described. They can detect movement, just same as your burglar alarm basically, but using that to track movement and then see where there's change. I think the challenge is that there's still a real resistance to technology when you're trying to carry out your reading. So we work a lot with the NHS, with carers, and frankly, I'm a carer too. It's enough to do to keep the house running without then having to worry about taking the blood pressure and the temperature and things. And it's about prioritizing that. But the other big thing we have to face is that the kit costs money. And actually, that's a real problem. So for us, that use of electricity is where we started from, and smart meter gave us a real opportunity to come back to it. And really what we want is for this to be free for everybody. So no matter who you are, there is a way of being able to do some remote monitoring if you're caring at a distance, or if you're with somebody and you want to go out and about and see if there are things that are happening when you're not there. Next slide. So I just thought I'd share this because it's actually my house. So basically what the smart meter does spit out is how much electricity gets used every 30 minutes. And what we have been able to do is pick out human behaviour from what the house does. So the fridge is nice, cyclical on, off. We can remove that and we can learn what a human does because we focus on change. So the one on the left is what my smart meter says. So the shape is what you're looking at really here. Thank you very much, Sarah Ellie. So what you're seeing is that you can see my morning starts not so active. And this is actually, as I said, I am a carer. So the person that I share my life with is a little later up in the day. And then you can see that then there's a lot more activity towards the end of the day. And if you look at the motion sensor, which is on the right-hand side, you can see it's not so big at the end of the day, but it's a very similar pattern. And this is joy because this means we can really prove that we can do this without any kit in your home as a starting point. Next slide. So what can monitoring do? So Madeleine gave us a really good example of lots of things that it can achieve, and it was really excellent walk through all of those things. And I think with your physiological monitoring, you can capture readings at home with no trips to the GP, which is really powerful. For me, it's about routine. So when I'm with my patients, I want to say, what's changed recently? Are you still following your normal routine? And one challenge we get a lot is to say, how can it work when there's two people in the home? But I don't know about you. I don't know how many of you carers are living with the person you're caring for, but when my other half is disrupted routine, then we're both disrupted. And actually, we both have a conversation about it. So that's the value is the household. But there's a very strong indicator that change in routine can be a sign of health changes. Health agencies or carers can understand what's happening between visits, which is, when I close the door, are you okay? We often end up making decisions, assuming things are or are not happening when we're not there. So it's good to know that. Get help when you need it. So that's the press button, the falls detector, things like that. Having time to make key decisions. So I've been often working in a hospital, making a decision about care after an event, and you're rushing because they want you out of hospital, and it's a really bad time to make that decision. It'd be much better to do it early and have a good chat and work out what the best options are. And actually, we've just released a paper that we've done by the Academic Health Science Network in Surrey, who are our NHS partners. And it's actually demonstrated that it's reduced the risk of admission to care home by 42%. So this is really great for if you're looking after people with dementia. Next slide. So just a little bit about what we do. So there are others. There are, of course, others, but I'm going to talk about mine. So it's basically, it is an app. The person who is being monitored doesn't need a smartphone, but somebody does. The very important thing is consent. So the person knows that what's happening. So whoever it is needs to get into the house. So you can't just do it remotely. And you are taken to a third party who will say, do you consent to Howz having the electricity data to provide you this service? And that's very, very clear. Very important to me that you own the data and you decide who sees it. And then basically it's just an app, as you can see there, and it will just every 2 hours the data is pulled from the smart meter. It can learn routine very quickly, and then it will set alerts to say the night is from here to here. There's normally movement by this time during the day. And then during the day, how many hours is it normal to go without activity? And if any of those are passed, you get an alert. But importantly, it will also send a message to you if there's a change in routine. So a good indicator, things like up in the night. So my auntie has the system, and we picked up a lot of electric activity in the middle of the night, which was weird. But actually we spoke to her, and actually she had very bad anxiety. Because my parents were going to visit and she was worried about cleaning up. It was actually what drove the anxiety, which is mad, but it was very anxiety. But we could see that change coming, and it meant I could ring and have a chat with her about anxiety management and actually get her into some mindfulness work. Next slide. So we are actually doing some tests with the NHS. So NHSX have funded some work that we're doing. So if you're anywhere near Surrey, please help and get involved, because what I want to do is know if this is enough. Is it enough to give you reassurance? And does it really help us tweak the levels that tell us it's a human or a machine? In Leicester, we're looking at, so in Surrey, it's with Surrey and Borders Partnership, NHS Foundation Trust, which is a mental health trust, so particularly around dementia, but we're seeing if there's an impact around the hospital care. In Leicester, we're working with a very large GP practice in the area, and De Montfort University are doing evaluation with us. So again, we want to know if it's enough. Can we do enough with this to try and produce some evidence to back up the work that's already been started in the space? But anywhere in England, you can try the app. And as Christina was saying, very important that more people get on with the smart meter, the more we can do. But also there's an opportunity there for public health and fuel poverty. So I don't know if you know, but a lot of areas do a lot of work over winter for cold homes. And if we can pick up people with fuel poverty, often there are other problems associated with fuel poverty that we can get involved in. And that's what I'm really, really passionate about. Next slide. So this is just tips, because I'm a physio, I can't have it. So kettle boiling, which your smart meter will pick up and tell us is a routine activity. It's a perfect opportunity for balance exercises. So in our app, we have some little tips that I've done. I've made some little videos of some exercises that you can be doing. And it's a perfect time. I'm a big fan of exercises you do in your daily life. I'm not a fan of an hour's exercise a day because people don't do them. So this is one I always do with my patients. Getting out of a chair if that's getting difficult, and I know there are lots of resources, so you can go to the Charter Society of Physiotherapy to have a look at their resources for this, but the simplest thing is getting your nose over your toes. And I was trained to do it by a Northeast physio, so I'm afraid it's always nose over toes, but you've got to get your nose over your toes and reach forward. Try and avoid pulling people up as much as you can. Good sleep posture. So a key to a good night's sleep, that's the time when you can reverse all those bad postural habits you've got into during the day, and especially as people, if they've got physical disabilities or mental health, because so autism, often you get anxiety can induce quite a posture. Try and get into a good posture. If anyone is sleeping on their front, please stop it straight away, on your back or your side, please. And then the last is getting out and about. So obviously after COVID, people are finding it harder to get out. Consider aids early and the adaptive things, as Madeleine was describing, getting in early to maintain function. Try some home exercises, but early consideration is definitely the key. And monitoring is your way of knowing earlier when things are going awry. And that's my lot. And I can see Julia's got a question already.
Thank you